There's a jacket on your head.
To reveal a social disaster. Honorable Madhav Sir, respected Yuvraj Sir, teachers, KSO faculties, and all members of KSO family, on behalf of Masters of Human Rights and Democratization MHRD program, I, Aditi Karki, would like to welcome all of you in the 6th intensive program of Human Rights and Democratization. It is our pleasure to have all of you present in the program. With post-disaster reconstruction, a case study of Nepal, as the major theme of the program, we are hoping to critically look into various aspects and effects of the natural disasters in developing countries in the program. With this, I would like to go into the formal session of the program. Beginning the program, I kindly request Professor Kapil Shrestha, Steering Committee member of MHRD, to chair the program and honor the dais. Now, I request, and it is our pleasure to have His Excellency Mr. Glenn White, Australian Ambassador, as the chief guest of the program, and we request him to honor the dais. Likewise, I request Executive Director and Principal of Kathmandu School of Law, Professor Dr. Yuvraj Sangola, to please honor the dais. Now, I request MHRD Program Convener, Professor Geeta Pathak Sangola, to please honor the dais. Now I request MHRD guest on behalf of the Internship Placements of MHRD program, Dr. Gail Robertson from Chahari, Nepal, to please honor the dais. Similarly, now I request former Principal, Mr. Kumar Ingnam, to please to be in the respective seat. Now I request from former Principal, Mr. Prakash Casey, to please be in the respective seats. Now I request Academic In Charge, Mr. Hongping Rana, to please be in the respective seat. Now I request Academic Head, Mrs. Sudha Casey, to please be in the respective seat. Now I request MHRD Internship and Dissertation Coordinator, Mr. Bhisma Prasad Sangola, to please be in the respective seat. With this, I apologize. I apologize for forgetting to mention the President of Kathmandu School of Law, Professor Madhav Acharya, to please honor the dais. Likewise, I request Vice Principal Ms. Rita Mainali to please be in the respective seat. I request Mr. Jayamangal Prasad to please be in the respective seat. Now I request Mr. Suyas Basne to be in the respective seat. Likewise, I request all the teachers, KSL staffs, and other members of the KSL family to be in the respective seats. Thank you all. With this, I would like to request Professor Dr. Yuvraj Sangola to please provide welcome remarks in the program.
Honorable Chair of the program, Your Excellency Ambassador of Australia to Nepal, MHRD scholars, my colleagues, and staffs. We have been talking a lot about natural disasters. It's very interesting. It's almost 6 years before I was invited by institutions to go to Korea and make a speech about natural disasters and human rights. So I felt in the beginning it's a very funny thing, like what human right in natural disasters? Then I started studying a little bit, preparing my lecture over there, and then I found that, there is nothing which is called natural disaster. Every disaster is human-made. Natural phenomenon for me, they are very natural, they keep occurring, and that's how the Earth planet exists, living. If this natural phenomenon stops taking place, and might be we will be probably dead planet like many other planets. So I felt why people die, not because of earthquake. Earthquake is very friendly thing. It moves the earth. Somewhere it generates water. Somewhere it flushes out the water, and then we enjoy jumping in earthquake. But why Why we die? Because the buildings fall. And those very nice buildings that we created for our existence and our welfare and our happiness fall over us. And why do they fall on us? Are these buildings enemy to us? No. Then they are wrongly designed or they are wrongly constructed. So it's a fault of engineers. So I thought that it's an engineering disaster instead of natural disasters that we have to say. But then why engineers made such very weak buildings? Did not they know the technology? Probably not, because university did not teach well to them. So this is now a university disaster. Why university do not teach engineer well, and construction planners and constructors and the contractors build buildings in a nice way? Then we have ethical fault line in our system. So this is not a natural disaster, it's an ethical disaster. So for me, this is where natural disaster starts, and then after that I did some more study about it, and my mind stopped saying like it's a natural disaster. So we had our 21 days big long program in January, where a lot of students from other countries also participated, called Economic and Social and Development Rights, where the thematic line we discussed this year was the disasters made by human being. Disasters created by manipulation of natural phenomena. So it is interventionism, wrong interventionism, unethical interventionism of human agents, or the rules and ethical guidelines that society is following actually makes a lot of people killed. In Nepal, for example, many thousands of people died. Not because earthquakes were so severe that it tore the earth. No, it didn't. It did not tear the earth apart. Most deaths occurred because of the building collapse. And the buildings were made in such a way, like they were supposed to be collapsed in such a in such a situation, because behind each building there was a corruption. Behind each building there was a corruption in the institution, the political institution of the state, and in this institution engineers work not with full of ethical guidelines the education demanded them to work for. So they compromise with some kind of illegal gains for the sake of their ethical guidelines, professional ethical guidelines they were supposed to go with. Sure. It's a nexus of corruption, nexus of inefficiency, nexus of education that we have. And also, a lot of people died because of wrong international assistance policies like UNDP taught people for many years, when there is an earthquake, please go and sneak under the bed seat. I mean, what kind of education they were given? A lot of people, a lot of children in the villages, when buildings were falling down from outside, they rushed inside and then sneak in under the bed seat. So buildings, I mean, before they launched this education, they were supposed to do what kind of buildings that we have, and whether going inside and sitting or standing just under the gate, it's safer or not. So what is very interesting findings is like most of the people, they died by the collapse of the building, where just under the bed seat under the table or under the windows or under the gate. So I think there was a fault line in this education. So now, where is the nexus of human right here? When earthquake takes place, probably government was not predicting this will take place because this is even behind the information of government. So government probably was not ill-intentioned to have a death of a lot of people by such kind of natural phenomenon. The nexus of human right starts right after when government starts failing. The people who have been in a situation like this, who are in terrible sufferings, they are lacking food, they have no space to live, everything is destroyed, and they are in a situation of trauma. Their income generation activities have been put off that time, so they are resourceless at that point. So in this situation, it is the responsibility of every individual human being who is not suffering from the same way, and the government and every institutions, whether it is governmental or not governmental, to go and support them. So there are three different trends we saw. There were some NGOs in Nepal going to work for, not for the support of the people, but for the selfie photo. So they distributed 2 sacks of rice and few rotten clothes, and then there was a beautiful selfie, and then in the Facebook like we donated. So that is a serious violation of human rights for me, because that is what is exhibition of inhumanity or happiness, a kind of glory over the sufferings of some people. So they were enjoying distributing food, and they were making selfie photos and placing in Facebook on the sufferings of other people. So they were not only degrading humanity, but they were teasing humanity. So that's serious human rights violation. Second, government did not reach at the time. Even government reached over there, government did not reach with the equipments, facilities, and people got infected, people got lost, everything, and then the trauma they suffered because some family members still were inside the houses, and it was a kind of the scare they created in the mind is never gone. So therefore, human rights violation seriously committed by the government. But still it was excusable, but it's almost 1 year. The government has committed a Reconstruction Council. The previous government did it and did not make the law. See what is very significant thing. Appointed the chief executive officers without law, because having someone favorable person in the position was much more matter of giving priority to the former prime minister, and the next prime minister, the present prime minister came, and he didn't like that because this man was not appointed by him. He made the law, then changed the previous executive director, and this gentleman is still not coming out of his office and taking shelter. The few days before storms took away a lot of things, and people have them again put. So this is a serious violation. So I think some of the people, some of the members of NGOs, some of the members of the government, and some of the people should be taken to Geneva for humanitarian crisis. So this is what I see. So I request Gita to change a little bit in the curriculum and not blame earthquake, because we cannot take earthquake to Geneva. If you blame these people, human agencies, only then I think we will be in the right place. So it's not a natural disaster, it's a disaster made by human beings. So in a worse situation, if you want to say, you can say natural disasters, not natural disasters, but natural phenomena related disasters, that much might be linguistically acceptable, but if you really want to deal it with from the perspective of human rights, I think this is my fault because I am a university teacher. Had I taught those people in a nice way, probably people would not be killed. So all professors should be killed. So that is where killed here means made responsible. So responsibility against this kind of trauma should start from the educational institution who fail to teach, therefore outshare is the wrongdoer, Professor Kapil Shrestha. Yes. This is a professor, and he's a professor at one of the nasty big university of this country, who didn't teach ethical thing when we taught an unethical thing. So professors doing politics, not teaching, and their engineering association, engineering colleges probably were to pinpoint and go and search for the fault liners or those who made the mistakes. So I think earthquake should not be blamed. Who should be blamed is that we, all people, every people, within country, outside country. Competition during those days, there was no place for keeping an aeroplane in the airport. Everybody came to compete that, oh, I am here, I am able, I am giving you something. But now, nobody is there. And there is a bill like this government is not cooperative, so how can we come? But there is a resolution United Nations has passed. Even government is reluctant to provide service and providing assistance. International community, according to this resolution, has authority to press the government to make it do things not for the sake of that nation, but for the victims who have lost their food, who have lost their children, who have lost their shelter, who have lost everything. So they are in a very, very desolated kind of situation. Sure, human rights should be sympathetic to these people too. Human rights should not just be a luxury of study, I think. So that's what we have been thinking and we have been doing. So with these, I think the internship would be very much successful. People will see the human rights violation. The people have been suffering, and then will not definitely blame the earthquake. Hopefully, participants will be blaming the inefficiency of the international community, Nepal's government, NGOs, and everyone, and most importantly, the whole ethical structure of this society. That's where we have to look into these issues. Therefore, the result will be good. Otherwise, you will be writing some dissertation, you will be writing some paper and putting into website, and then people will say that, oh, natural disasters, earthquake killed people in Nepal. Earthquake did not. The buildings. Not the buildings, engineers. Not the engineers, professors. Not the professors. The ethical values the professors have been holding kill the people, a lot of people in Nepal. So we have to forget earthquake, and we have to talk about these nasty, ethical behaviors within the structure of our society. So it is very sociological for me. So this human rights course, therefore, with natural phenomenon kind of things, should relate with natural phenomenon plus sociology. And then probably we will be able to understand things properly. Hopefully, enjoy a lot to being in your visit and come back and start writing. Thank you very much.
Convener, Professor Geeta Pathak sir would like to present highlights and objectives of the program.
Professor Kapil Shrestha, who has been the steering committee member for Masters of Human Rights and Democratization, and also served as a member of, as former commissioner to the National Human Rights Commission. The chief guest of this intensive, His Excellency Glenn White, Australian Ambassador to Nepal, and thank you very much for kindly being consented within the very short time that you agreed to come, and this is the love that you have given to us. And the president of KSL, Professor Madhav Prasad Acharya, who has been also my teacher, very honorable. The executive director and principal, Professor Dr. Yuvraj Sangrola, who just spoke highlighted very important aspects. Dr. Gail Robertson, the resource person to the next session, and also serving and contributing for a long time. How many years have you already served in Nepal? 30 years. 26 years. Okay, about to. So she's contributing in one of the most important organizations working in the areas of mental health. So she has been you have provided the internship place for one of our MHRD scholars, Marian, who is here. You can raise your hand. Former principals, Prakash Kesi, Kumar Ingna, my colleagues, and vice principals, all the faculties, head, who is actually the in charge for academic program, and academic in charge, Hong Kong sir, staffs, and the most importantly, the MHRD scholars. We have this intensive, as usual. If you looked in our schedule, you can see on your backside that intensive highlights, and we've started, this cohort started from 2010-2011. We received the student from Sydney and for second semester since 2011. And we had to actually conduct our intensive in Kathmandu, a couple of organizations. And 2012 we continued. Then from 2013 we started taking our student to see the development projects and then problems and so on in Melanchi, the east northern part of Nepal. And the fourth intensive in Pokhara again. Then we did discuss a lot of issues on refugees and many more. And the fifth intensive, then we had kept one of the very important aspects and the possibility for Nepal's development is the environment and other issues like in Chitwan. And the sixth intensive this year that we have kept the theme, which is very pertinent, that is that we are going to Dolakha, and we have kept very few days here in Kathmandu Valley. So today we have the program, we have very rigorous sessions and then workshops. So till 5:35 we have the session. And the reason why we have kept this long, because tomorrow we have organizations visit in Kathmandu. So we wanted to go directly to those organizations to see what are the challenges and scope and initiatives given by the government, different entities or agencies, especially the disaster management. We're going to armed police force, and we are also seeing, we've called already today to the Nepal police, very high-level resource person, who also worked in disaster management issues. And of course we are also going to organizations, the NGOs, and also to see that how they are working, and definitely we will discuss the challenge that we have received. The objective, and which is very visible in your the program itself. So just very quickly to highlight that one of the reasons that we are organizing this intensive with the theme to have the student and many more things. Then I have to defend, and I'm telling in front of His Excellency that it was very hard for me to convince a number of faculties because I received them asking that, can you guarantee the life, the security of the student in Nepal? Then I said that, look, I have brought green stickers of my institution, but believe me and trust me that the life is full of red sticker. No one has green sticker forever. And then I again asked that, can you, all the professors, can you guarantee my life in Sydney? Then the answer was just, question mark. So this is what I had to defend. And I'm lucky that I really, I'm thankful to all the students actually amidst this crisis, and still, the aftershocks going on. The second day of your arrival, I think, right? The same week. Again, we had another aftershock. And so and you have come to take this challenge. So we are going we are looking the vulnerability, the issues of women, children, and other socioeconomically marginalized group. And I don't know how far have we been able to, observe the situation, but we will just see the glimpse. And we are providing this residential platform in Dolakha and going to Jiri to see, especially focusing some of the issues. And we're going to meet UNICEF at the local level, working in there. So on the whole, this is about to build a collective will and commitment of participants, including myself and my faculty colleagues, by making them empathize not a sympathy, not a charity, but a rights-based approach. That with the problem of victims of natural disaster, of course human-made disaster, who deserve to receive their basic means of subsistence through human rights-based oriented measures from the state. And definitely students would be having a look that the rotten rice is being served, and what ED also highlighted. And at the end, definitely we would be conceptualizing this program and came up into conclusion that I also believe that earthquake is a process, a natural process, and we the human being creating or causing problem to this process. So therefore, this is an amalgamation of natural process and human-made caused by making very fragile construction and creating problem and number of people. And sometimes we are in Nepal. I mean, we always say that there are different types of vulnerability that we face. That sometimes even the people having money for making new house, but still they had sort of emotional attachment with the house by saying that, oh, this is the house where I was born. My parents, my grandfathers have been living, so I cannot go out from this, so because of which lost the life. So this is, sometimes we should really be practical, not to be too emotional. That is also the lessons learned. And definitely we will be having some look. And the reason also we chose this, because we have disaster relief center. I can see the faculties present over here looking. We have criminal justice and human rights center clinic in Kathmandu, and also disaster relief center. So this will complement the work of disaster relief center. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Remarks in the program.
Very pleased to be part of this program, to be picking up on what is such an important issue in this post-disaster period in Nepal of mental health. I'm going to be talking in much more detail about some of those issues later. But I think at this point it is just to say thank you to the programme organisers to be including this issue as such an important one. One of the questions that sort of strikes me when I look at the title of today's programme, and that we are talking about post-disaster. The government talks post-disaster. And it seems that earthquake has been mentioned this morning, but in government circles, earthquake cannot actually be talked about. And I think that is a fairly major issue that needs to be looked at and understood more about it as this programme develops, both in Kathmandu and out in Dolakha. And I look forward to sharing more on the mental health issues in the next session. Thank you.
Now I request Mr. Pradeep Pathak on behalf of MHRD alumni to present some remarks in the program.
Very soon joining us as an alumni, scholars and faculties and staff from Kathmandu School of Law. It's my privilege and a great honor to be present on the inauguration of the internship program on human rights and democratization and say a few words as a member of the MHRD alumni. One of the very highlights of the MHRD program that distinguishes it from other regional programs is its emphasis and focus on the burning issues in the Asia Pacific region under the critical and emerging issues course. The internship program that Kathmandu School of Law organizes every year has been very impressive in the sense that, as far as I know, Kathmandu School of Law is the only institution among the partners who runs a regular intensive course every year in a pertinent issue of human rights. And that offers our MHRD friends a unique opportunity to engage and interact with human rights academics, the practitioners, and experts, so that they will understand the real problem.
The organisers for inviting me along to this inauguration of this particular program. I think I've spoken at one before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was in 2013.
Yeah, thanks for the reminder. I've been here in Nepal now 3 years, and it's been kind of an interesting 3 years. I've never worked in South Asia before. Most of my experience was either in the South Pacific or in the Middle East. And I have to say that South Asia is another taste and flavour entirely from those places. I guess most regions in the world are. And before I really begin, I'd just like to comment that as a diplomat, I have views and observations to make, I guess, about not just human rights, but certainly in the context of the earthquakes. And as an individual that's lived through those earthquakes and 3 years of life here in Nepal, not 26 or 27, I don't want to be seen as coming across negative in anything I say, but there are a lot of negatives, unfortunately, in this story. As there are some positives, but there are a lot of negatives. I don't know I'd go quite so far as to suggest that every professor should be killed. I think that might have been a little extreme. I don't think professors necessarily can be held accountable for the woes of political elites and society in general, but certainly as a society, Nepal certainly has challenges in front of it, as do many developing countries. But Nepal certainly has many, many challenges in front of it, and unfortunately, one of those negative comments I make is they don't seem to learn from the past too well. But, I mean, we now have a situation where Nepal has a constitution. That constitution's already been amended, rightly or wrongly, others to judge, but we do have a constitution. After almost 10 years of struggle and effort to get that far, people generally aren't down in the Terai or anywhere else sort of shooting each other necessarily over political difference. However, there is still a great deal of concern, clearly, at the civil society levels in all these remote areas, and in fact in Kathmandu and the urban centres as well, about the governance that they get from their elected governments. So, as a context, some years ago, maybe 2 years ago, I think I spoke to the Disaster Relief Management faculty of this university, and one of the questions I was asked was, and this was pre-earthquake of course, what does Australia do to manage disasters? And I made the comment that Australia, like Nepal, is a country that experiences natural disasters every year. There's nothing new in natural disasters in either Nepal or Australia. I guess the difference in Australia is that we manage those natural disasters before they happen. And by that I mean we actually come up with, some might say, rules, administrative guidelines, even legislation about where people can build things, infrastructure, how organisations and institutions react, and even to train individuals, not train perhaps, but encourage individuals in the community to act for the benefit of that community when an incident happens. In our case in Australia, it's either usually bushfires or floods. We don't have too many earthquakes, although we have had one or two. I include the Newcastle event some decades ago. But the disasters we have are, if not planned for, at least they're managed before the event. And what really made me say that to the individual that asked me was I'd been across to the far west of Nepal in a place called Darchula. Darchula, the year before in the monsoon, had been badly damaged by the river that runs next to the town. On the other side of that river is India. That's how far across it is. It's over 1,000 kilometres by road from here, which is a long way in Nepal, let me tell you. But the interesting bit was that I was staying in a hotel which I was led to believe was the best hotel in town. And I remember looking over the balcony, and this was in sort of April, long before the next monsoon was due. And the foundations of that building were actually sitting in the riverbed. So even in the non-flood time, the water was flowing around the foundation of that building. In Australia, of course, that would never have happened. Here in Nepal, an engineer said it was okay. A builder built it. And even before that, somebody presumably said, yes, tick, you can build that building in that spot. But would I as an investor ever buy a building like that? No. Would I as an engineer? I'd like to think I never built one. But I stayed in it. It existed in a place that's already been damaged by annual floods. Not just once, but annually. It was a salient lesson to me about the kind of basic levels of planning that don't really exist in Nepal's urban societies or even remote societies. So, planning against inappropriate infrastructure and development, I think, is clearly one that should be, particularly now we're talking about reconstruction, come to the fore. And I might say that I made some notes in the car coming up here, such as the way that I usually think. Being an ambassador, I sometimes come across, as usual, interesting snippets, and I try to vacuum them up. I don't remember all of them, but this one came across my desk just 2 days ago. And that is this report, the ICJ, the International Commission of Jurists report on Nepal's human rights impact of the post-earthquake disaster response, otherwise known as a preliminary report. And I didn't get the chance to thumb through it all. There's 40-odd pages. But I did read the introduction, and I thought I'd quote part of those paragraphs to you, because I think they are germane to this conversation, and certainly perhaps to what I want to say. It says in part, human rights are an essential element of post-disaster humanitarian assistance. Governments and intergovernmental humanitarian aid agencies alike have an obligation under international law to ensure that human rights are fully integrated in the post-disaster humanitarian response at all phases: planning, implementation, short-term emergency relief, and long-term reconstruction and rehabilitation. Non-governmental humanitarian agencies too have a responsibility to respect international human rights, human rights principles, under the sphere and other guidelines. This entails providing assistance to people sufficient to guarantee at least minimum essential levels of food, health, housing and education needs, which is essential to the enjoyment of their human rights. Given past experience in both Nepal and post-disaster context elsewhere, the ICJ has been concerned about the potential for human rights violations in the post-earthquake humanitarian response. Note that's the response, not the earthquakes. Particularly with respect to gender or caste-based discrimination, as well as political corruption. That's their words, not mine. earthquakes is a very traumatic experience. What kept me centred as an individual is the fact that as an ambassador, I also had a sort of role to perform, not just for Australian citizens who were caught up in this, but also in terms of helping to coordinate Australia's response to this earthquake and the humanitarian crisis that it created. I think the ICJ has good reason to be concerned. A year later, questions about the adequacy of the government's reconstruction program, or rather when it will begin in earnest, certainly abound. In fact, I read in today's Kathmandu Post an editorial sort of talking about that very thing. In fact, some of you who have read the newspapers recently would be aware the National Reconstruction Authority was recently criticised by Prime Minister Ollie. No. Prime Minister Ollie, of course, helped appoint the NRA CEO after some controversy, and Prime Minister Ollie and other senior politicians are actually on the guiding committee of this NRA. So the Kathmandu Post article was quite right, and I think quite quick, to point out that by virtue of his comments, Prime Minister Ollie was actually criticising his own performance. I'll be interested to see what sort of response do you get to that. The international community, well, look, I'll start again. Basically, as I said, Australia does plan for these things long before an event happens. We have plans in place, we have institutions in place, we have strategies in place, and even tactics in place to be able to address community concerns, community needs during an event that affects a mass group of people. I recall back soon after the earthquake, sitting in a tent somewhere near the Finance Ministry's office, listening to the then Finance Minister, who said, "Who could have foreseen an earthquake of this magnitude in Nepal?" I have to say that just about everybody, certainly in the international community, I know the EU, the US, the British, certainly the Australian Embassy had been prepared 5 years before the event in terms of food, shelter, water supplies, fuel supplies, stocked away just in case or when we expected an earthquake to happen. So if an embassy can do it, I'm surprised that the Ministry of Finance can't do it. So it goes to what I was saying earlier, that there seemed to have been very little planning put into actually doing something about such an event, should it, or not should, but when it would happen, because it was expected, and I have to say, ladies and gentlemen, more are expected. Nepal is an extremely active seismic zone. There is no doubt at all that there will be further major earthquakes in Nepal. That's not a prophecy, it's not Nostradamus, it's pure science that says that these fault levels and the fact that the Indian subcontinent is going under the Asian subcontinent suggests that there will be a series of earthquakes in geological time. What that happens in people time is another thing entirely. So the finance minister's comments, that then finance minister's comments, struck me a raw note with me. We then went on to see, and this is where some of the negatives start to happen, the Australian relief operation swung into action within 2 days. Australia provided initial funding for humanitarian relief. We also supplied 2 C-17 aircraft from our Air Force to fly in with goods and equipment. I won't bore you with how long it took me to have to deal with a very shaken government administration process to even get access for those 2 aircraft to land. Every country was trying hard to get space for their aircraft to land. A technical detail is that Tribhuvan International Airport is the only international airport. One of the good things, fortunate things of the earthquake was that that airport was operational. If it had been damaged, if the airstrip had been broken up, it could have been 10 days before any relief at all had got into the country. It was just one of those lucky things, and of course it was also very lucky that this earthquake, in fact both earthquakes, happened in the daytime.
Yeah.
On a Saturday, the 1st, just happened to be Anzac Day for those Australians among us. It was a Saturday, the 25th of April, and it was 11:56 a.m, so kids weren't at school, people weren't going to work, people were out of their houses. Very lucky. The death toll could have been a lot worse if kids had been in school.
Yes.
Because so many classrooms were destroyed. The kids were trained, as you've heard, to hide under the desk.
People in offices.
People in offices. It was just one of those things that both those earthquakes happened, the 7.8 and the 7.3, happened on probably the best days they could choose to happen.
Yes.
So that's a fortunate thing. The 9,000 dead is tragic, but it's lucky it wasn't 90,000.
Yes. Nature was a bit kind to us.
Nature is sometimes kind but not very fair, I think, is the way that I describe it. And certainly that comes true of human rights, because I think from research I've been finding out, natural disasters usually mean it affects those that are least able to cope, which in Nepal's case means women, children, and certainly poor families.
Yes.
Where it's found that within days we started to plan not just for the relief operation within the embassy, but also the reconstruction phase. The sorts of decisions that were taken by government at the time kind of made me as an individual say, what? The airport, for example, has 9 slots. Slots are where major aircraft can park on the apron. So they only had 9 of them, which meant it was hard to get aircraft in and out. The problem was that that airstrip was closed between 12 midnight and 6 a.m. So for 6 hours of the day, nothing was moving at Tribhuvan Airport. Why, you ask? I have absolutely no idea. I thought it might have been air traffic control fatigue, but those that were here know that the US military were here, the Indian military were here, Chinese military were here. Australia used to operate the Baghdad airport when civilian operators couldn't. Some military could have operated Tribhuvan airport for 24 hours a day. It would have made the relief operation that much easier.
Yeah.
Didn't happen. I've never actually received an answer as to why, but it never happened. Which I think is one of those tragic mistakes or errors. It may be based in a technical issue, but frankly I think it was more to do with a policy decision of someone's. That said, let me say that the army, the Nepal army, clearly swung into action very quickly. And as an instrument of the state, it probably did its people proud in terms of being able to be so quickly on the ground and doing things. It was cohesive in its own actions. I guess, again, one of my observations is the overall response from the government was not as cohesive. We had situations where ministries were actually fighting turf wars with each other as to what part of the relief operation reconstruction they would actually handle. We still see a little bit of that overtone in terms of the NRA and its relationship with the ministries that should actually do the work. The other strange decision, I guess, that I found strange was taken was that 3 weeks, I think it was 3 weeks in, the Nepal government decided that relief materials would no longer be given duty-free access. This in a country that required so much from the international community then we find that the international community was going to have to pay duty on much of its relief stuff that it wanted to bring in. Things like hammers and nails, for example, swords, machetes. Australia was bringing in various kits for families, one of which was a shelter kit, I think it was called, which had tarpaulins, hammers, nails, tools. The tarpaulins and the rope, duty-free. But because it was part of a pack, we were going to have to pay duty on it. So I think we're up to about $160,000 US duty just to get this equipment in. We kind of put our hands up and said, why would they do this? I remember asking various senior officials, why did you do this? No one could actually say, or at least weren't prepared to. The only answer I ever got was from that then finance minister who said, Nepal is a sovereign country, we must be able to control our borders and we must be able to make money doing it. It's a budgetary issue. Well, forgive me, I think he missed the point.
No, this is a very frank statement on your part. Very good.
It goes further on that theme. We recently had an Australian senator here, Senator Sam Dastyari, who was a Liberal senator out of Sydney. He had been encouraged to come here by the Non-Resident Nepal Association, whose global president, in fact, is a Melbourne resident, Shesh Gale, who is one of Nepal's more successful sons, I guess. The Senator and I went along to see some people, including the Nepal Planning Authority Planning Commission. And I said, is there any plan, and this was only 3 weeks ago, is there any plan to give a subsidy or lower duty on construction materials coming across the border, in other words, a honeymoon period, to enable people to start the reconstruction in the hills? I was told, no, there's not. Why not? Because not everybody's house was destroyed. In other words, there was no stomach or no interest in providing a head start to even just get a stockpile of materials ready to try and help people whose homes have been destroyed to reconstruct, simply because they were concerned that others might get a free ride. Community who may consider investing in Nepal as too risky. It's kind of, and I'm not talking as a diplomat or ambassador here, I'm talking as an individual. I find it extraordinary that a group of people can hold the rest of the country hostage in the way it did. They had grievances, but I'm not entirely sure this is the best way to address them. And I suspect that the people in the Terai have finally decided that it may not be the best way to address them either. But that's another story too. So the international community, $4.4 billion US, not a lot has arrived, or rather it's been pledged, but there hasn't been a lot of action on the ground. We've talked about the non-resident, rather the National Reconstruction Authority. It's still woefully short of the staff that it says it needs. It's a committee basis. It looks a bit complex to me, but I'm not a reconstruction expert. This whole subject, the disaster and its response, its early response and its longer-term response, is like an onion. It's got so many layers that you just keep peeling them and keep finding other layers underneath. So certainly I think you'll find an interesting visit when you make it to the areas in question. Keep your ears attuned to what the people on the ground are saying. It doesn't always gel with what you hear from an ambassador or even a politician for that matter, or a professor maybe. But they're the people that really count in this story, the people who are still left in desperate straits in these regions and districts, that have their homes still destroyed, are still waiting on the government to respond with this 200,000 rupee grant, if that's what it is. And I might add that 200,000 rupees is not going to build a house even in Nepal very well. So it means that those people then are sort of anticipating taking out loans to up to 350,000 rupees extra, which is about $3,500 US. But to a Nepali living in the remote areas of rice grower, that's a lot of money. Which means that if nothing else happens, that family will be under the yoke of a fairly large mortgage for years to come unless something else happens, like a grant from the government. So these issues will reverberate into the future, and I won't be around to see them, but certainly the faculty members here and certainly some of perhaps the students will be able to follow them from afar and hopefully make a difference, because that's really what we're all here to do, make a difference, for good, hopefully. Thank you very much.
Much respected Professor Madhav Acharya, Dr. Gita Sandola, coordinator and innovator of MHRD program here, and Dr. Gail Robertson, my faculty colleagues, and our MHRD students / scholars, because we consider them both, and other students and other friends who are present here. So for almost 1.5 hours, we have been listening to various speakers, and our speakers, our friends, have been turning on many important issues. And and I would like to thank them, especially Ambassador White, for his very frank and sometimes shocking, but very well thought statements he made. And these are, of course, born out of his 3 years intense observation of different aspects of Nepali society. And I fully agree with you that our MSRD students, on behalf of Kathmandu School of Law, on behalf of our MHRD Asia Pacific course, I would like to thank 5 of you for being brave enough to choose Nepal. Because if you had not chosen Nepal, this event would not have been organized. Thank you once again. And we do hope that you would bring back best memories of your short stay in Nepal. Yes, it has been a very momentous and unprecedented and irreversible phase of transition and transformation. And in this transition and transformation till now, we were preoccupied with the words like post-conflict transition. We are preoccupied with post-transition issues, and we are obsessed with post-movement or post-revolutionary things. But now, as you can see, that we have to deal with post-disaster reconstruction or post-earthquake thing. So, you see that in addition to several other transitions and paradoxes and crises and breakdowns, this natural disaster in form of earthquake has intervened us. And it has broadened our outlook and our understanding in a very dramatic way, dramatic fashion. It's a lesson, but unavoidable lesson. Because our friends have said that natural disaster like earthquake for Nepal is nothing new. It's a cyclical process. Actually, even before earthquake, see, we're anticipating it. Because in Nepal's history, every 70, 80 or 100 years, we have been visited by some mega earthquakes. In a population of little more than 200,000 people have been destroyed. And about 300 people have died, although compared to Sindhu Baljo, most people have succumbed to earthquake. So, as it has exposed our vulnerability, our weakness, our foolishness, our unpreparedness vis-a-vis forces of nature. Professor Yuvraj may be unhappy with university professors. Well, being a university professor, this self-appraisal is not very bad. Since I'm a human rights and political science professor, I don't use such harsh words very often. Instead, I prefer to conduct critical self-appraisal in a different way. And so, well, for us it has been a kind of wake-up call. Because we found drawbacks, shortcomings, foolishness on part of many people. And the most shocking thing, I said that just Ambassador White says that Nepal government, I don't know who advised Nepal government, and from which agency it seeks advice, that it decided to impose customs duty on relief and rehabilitation materials. See, it wanted to make profit out of people's misery. And people did not realize what kind of message that it would send to international community, because the whole world know Nepal as a not only peace-loving, as a very friendly and welcoming country and open society. For the best, and thanking you all. Thank you.